Pleasure to welcome Reverend Paul Johnson, who will be speaking to us about the power of regret, how looking backward moves us forward. Welcome. Reverend.
On October 24th, 1960, a man named Charles Dumont came to visit Edith Piaf, the famous singer in Paris. And he had 20 pieces of music in his satchel that he wanted to share with her as possibilities for her repertoire. She did not even want to talk to him. She, not too long before that, she had been in a long-term coma because of a liver problem, probably due to her alcohol and drug addiction. She weighed less than 100 pounds. She was not feeling too well. But he was rather insistent, so she said, okay, I'll listen to one song out of those 20. So he shared the song with her on the piano, singing, "No, nothing at all. No, I regret nothing at all. It's paid, swept away. I couldn't care less about the past." That's her famous signature song. She had 20 people listen to it, of her staff and friends, and she decided to adopt it as part of her repertoire. And 2 months later, she got 22 curtain calls after she sang that as her final number. Daniel Pink, in his very interesting book, The Power of Regret, How Looking Backward Will Help Us Move Forward, begins his book with that description of how that song came to be part of her signature song. And let's listen to it.
Non, rien de rien. Non, je ne regrette rien. Ni le bien qu'on m'a fait, ni le mal, tout ça m'est bien égal. Non, rien de rien. Non, je ne regrette rien. C'est payé, balayé, oublié. Je me fous du passé. Avec mes souvenirs, j'ai allumé le feu. Mes chagrins, mes plaisirs, je n'ai plus besoin de balayer les amours avec leur trémolo, balayer pour toujours. Je repars à zéro. Non, rien de rien. Non, je ne regrette rien, ni le bien qu'on m'a fait, ni le mal, tout ça m'est bien égal. Non, rien de rien. Non, je ne regrette rien, car ma vie, car mes joies, aujourd'hui, ça commence avec toi.
She felt very strongly about no regrets, didn't she, in singing that strong song. But that story of resounding force against regret as a common way of looking at things was brought out so forcefully in this book by Pink. And he quotes others who would agree with her: Norman Vincent Peale, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Angelina Jolie, Bob Dylan, John Travolta. And there are 50 books in the Library of Congress that begin with the title, No Regrets. And there's been a lot, a regret as that stomach turning feeling that the present world would be better and the future brighter if only you hadn't chosen so poorly, decided so wrongly, or acted so stupidly in the past. And it's amazing to me, all of the research which he surveys that has been done about regret as a human emotion, starting way back in the 50s and then going forward. And most interestingly, and this was hard for me to believe, there have been 3 academic studies having to do with regret and the Olympics. Now, the general research pattern here is to look at the bronze, silver, and gold medalists when they're up on the reviewing stand, and then have people or a computer look at their facial expressions to see if there's any regret there. So who do you think has regret of those 3? The silver, right? The silver. Because the gold, and one of these things put a numerical thing on it. The winners were exuberant. They were close to 10. The silver winners were way down in the 4s, and the bronze winners were in the 7s in the scoring. Now, it was surmised that the silver winner is consumed by the thought, if only I had made that last turn differently, if only I'd prepared more. But the bronze winner says, well, at least I placed. You know, isn't that interesting? But the fact that there were 3 full-fledged, exhaustive studies amazes me about regret. But he takes a different tack towards regret, not as something that we want to deride and totally wipe out of our minds as being a worthless emotion, but to learn from it and to use it as a stimulus for the future. And he himself began to research this. He began his American Regrets Project, which surveyed almost 4,500 people about their regrets. And then he started a website called World Regrets Survey that collected the regrets of 16,000 people from 105 countries. Then he followed up with in-depth interviews of 100 of those people. And I thought that's fascinating that he was so interested in following up on this fundamental human emotion. But he found that regrets are in 4 categories. The first are foundational regrets, failures to be responsible or prudent or conscientious. In those things which give us a degree of material means, or which will give us physical well-being, which will give us a good foundation in life for living life to the fullest. So people express regrets about, not working hard enough in school, of not taking care of their health, of too much alcohol, playing too many video games, watching too much television, and spending money unwisely or driving recklessly. Oh, I wish I hadn't smoked so much. Or mental health regrets. I should have gotten help from my mental health much earlier than I did. Or coming out with my sexual orientation much earlier in life. Those are foundation regrets. A second are boldness regrets. People who are unhappy about the fact that they played it safe rather than taking a chance in romance, in business, in education. Things that really stunted their possibility of growth in so many areas. Or travel too. A lot of people express regrets that they didn't do more traveling, haven't done more traveling in their life. And then there are the moral regrets, many of them involving harm of others. Especially evident was bullying. People who earlier in life, at school or whatever, bullied folks. And I was particularly taken with the story of a woman by the name of Kim, who was from my home state of Minnesota, from the Iron Range area. And she took the school bus every day. And when the school bus picked up one girl from a remote farm, she'd come on the bus and all the other students would hold their nose as if she smelled and wouldn't give her a place to sit and said just terrible things to her. Well, Kim felt bad for this girl. So one day she gave her a seat next to her and they had a nice, pleasant conversation. But then Kim was so bullied because she did this that she dropped the relationship and never befriended that girl anymore. And as an adult, she regretted that so much. She said, sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm terrified at the way that I refuse to act on my own values. And she would start to cry as she remembered what she had done as a child. But regrets about insulting work colleagues or threatening neighbors or cheating, stealing, academic dishonesty. Very interesting to me that people felt disloyalty for not joining the military, disloyalty to the country, and or it's worldwide, so it'd be other countries as well. But then such things as dishonoring parents or being disrespectful for teachers. So moral regrets. And then their connection regrets. This was the largest category of regrets that people expressed. And they arise from relationships that have come undone or remain incomplete, involving spouses and parents and children, siblings, friends, and colleagues, where you haven't kept up with someone who was very important in your life, or something came between you and the relationship failed and you haven't stayed connected. So those are the 4 types of regrets. Does any of you respond to any of those? I have some of those, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But what's to be done, he said. How can regret give us the impetus to move forward? And the first suggestion he has is undo it. New Year's is a good time to undo it. If I've harmed others, as is often the case with moral regrets and sometimes the case with connections regrets, can I make amends through an apology or some form of emotional or material restitution? Is there a way that you can do that as we start a new year? I'm wondering if Kim can contact that little girl somehow. Say, I feel so sorry for what I did or what I didn't do. Or if Kim's not available, can she help young people to learn about how harmful bullying is, or to encourage those who have been bullied? Or if I've harmed myself, as is the case with many of the foundational regrets I mentioned, and also with some connection regrets, can I fix the mistake? Can I begin paying down debt or logging a few more hours at work? Can I reach out immediately to someone whose connection I severed? You know, I thought of this connection regret in reference to a friend of mine, a colleague in ministry, we're very close for many years, and now we've been apart. And he has reached out to me many times, but I've never reached out to him. And Paul, that's not good. You have a new year, and you can reach out. I'm going to do that. A second thing he says you can do is at least it. Remember the bronze folks at the Olympics? He says that one of the worst mistakes he ever made was to go to law school. And he regrets it like everything. But that's where he met his wife, in law school. The best relationship and decision that he's ever made. So when he gets down on himself for going to law school, getting behind in his career development for what he really wanted to do in life, he says, well, at least I met my wife. A third way is self-disclosure. Disclosing to others our regrets brings an array of physical and mental benefits, which have been well documented by the research. And this really affects me because the greatest regret I've had in my life has to do with my father. He was suffering from heart disease and had a tough time and was really ill. And so Carol and I changed our vacation plans and went earlier we were out on the East Coast to go back to Wisconsin to visit my dad. He hadn't visited our son, David, who had been born, or got to meet our son, David, had been born 8 months before. And so we went to visit, and he was not doing well. And I remember one day he invited me to go out with lunch, for lunch with him. We went out and had a nice lunch, but our relationship was very strained. Was an evangelical minister, and I had become a Unitarian Universalist minister. And he felt that I was leading people to hell. And whenever we got together, we had to avoid the topic of religion and politics as well, or we get into a fight. And over the years, we had said so many unkind things to each other. Remember, well, when your father says to you, you're like a dog returning to its vomit, he said to me one time. Or one time he said, you're leading people to hell. Well, that's kind of hurtful. So I would reply by saying, Dad, you're putting capital punishment at the center of history in the cross of Christ. Well, he didn't care for that. And so we had to avoid that. We always had to go tippy-toe about how we related to each other. But I had this feeling on that last luncheon that this might be the last time I'd be with my dad. And I wanted to express to him how I loved him, how I appreciated the wonderful things that he did for me in my life, and that even though we were on different sides of the fence theologically, that I had learned a lot from him about ministry, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. I was afraid that at our last time together, we'd get in a fight and say more terrible things to each other. And so I didn't say anything along that line. And we went home. 2 weeks later, he was dead. And I regretted so much, I still regret, that I didn't take that chance. Didn't take that chance to express my love and appreciation. You know, death is such a final thing, isn't it? Such a final thing. And so I was in terrible shape. I had trouble sleeping. I was morose. I was kicking myself around the block. I remember a woman, Daphne Holder. Remember her, Carol? She called one day. She said, well, how are things going? And I just unburdened myself. And I told the story of my regret. She said, oh, Paul, I understand that, how you might feel that way. And he was probably feeling the same way. You know, that had never occurred to me. And she said, I can understand how you acted and how you're feeling now. And it was this, a burden was lifted from my shoulders. And so I regret it in a different way, not as a terrible human failing, but something as a common human experience that we all have. And I guess the learning is to share your appreciation and love with others before they pass on, right? I can carry that into the future. Now, Pink says, well, some people aren't comfortable sharing their regrets with other people. So he said, well, just for 3 days, write for 15 minutes about your feeling of regret. Or say words into a tape recorder or to your phone for 3 consecutive days. The next way he suggests is from self-comparison. Rather than judging or belittling yourself, extend the same warmth and understanding you would offer another person to yourself. That's kind of what the woman from my congregation did for me. And of course, then finally, analyze and strategize. What lessons can I learn from my regret in planning my future? You know, it's possible to, even on a New Year's time, anticipate future regrets, right? One morning in 1888, Alfred Nobel, the inventor of dynamite, was reading the morning paper, and he came to the obituaries, and he saw his own obituary. It said, "The merchant of death is dead." Well, it was his brother Ludwig who had died, but that affected him deeply. That is the way he would be remembered by the world. When he died 8 years later, his family was kind of surprised to find that his fortune went to the establishment of Nobel Prizes for people who had contributed greatly to humankind. He wanted to be remembered for that, rather than have the regret of being remembered for being the merchant of death. I was interested in seeing a study that came out of Duke University in 2016. The library there wanted to do a survey of undergraduates to determine what they felt about their library services. And they did a little experiment. For half of the undergraduates, they said, we are going to draw a winner of a $75 gift card of everyone who answers this survey. And they found out that only a third of the people who got that offer responded. The other one said, well, everyone is going to be put in the pot to have their name drawn, every undergraduate. But if you have not answered the survey, you won't get the $75 award if your name is drawn. 2/3 of the people responded to that because they wanted to avoid that terrible feeling of regret. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? So Daniel Pink ends his book with the words, "Regret makes me human. Regret makes me better. Regret gives me hope." Well, a happy new year to all of you as you learn from your regrets. So may it be.